Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. Montgomery County Police Chief Marcus Jones will retire in July after nearly 40 years as a police officer. Tonight, we sit down with him to reflect on his career and where Montgomery County was, is, and comes to public safety. Chief, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Harold. Appreciate it, and my pleasure.
There's so many things that I want to talk to you about, and let me just first start with retirement for you.
hmm
Why now? Why not last year? Why not wait another year? What is it about this year that made you say it's time to finally hang up my hat?
Right. So, great question. I've really been contemplating this over the past couple of years about really
Mhm.
just trying to look at holistically not only just my career and my tenure as the chief of police, but also looking at my overall career with Montgomery County. Of course, as you know, I've been with the county now for 38 years. My entire police career has been with the Montgomery County Police Department. And really, as I reflected towards the end of last year, really the last quarter of last year, I began to start to really think about the things that we had accomplished, particularly the things that I had put in motion with my vision for our department, and really thinking about in the long term about me personally, what was important to me as far as my accomplishments with the department, but also my overall career goal, which was really that I would be the chief probably for about 4 to 5 years. And thus I had accomplished that. I felt like July was really the ideal time for me to really to go ahead and retire and begin to think about smelling the roses in a different kind of a way. So yeah, so that's generally what it was about. After spending having some extensive conversations with my wife, and about what the future was to hold, that we just thought the new chapter would begin in July.
You spoke about your vision. How would you characterize your vision when you first became chief, and how did it evolve?
Mm. Yeah, one of the things that I really wanted to set out and really be engaged in was more community involvement and engagement, and having better partnerships with some members of our community, as many as we could, that we could really develop better relationships with. And I felt like overall that was we did accomplish some of that. I'm not totally satisfied with an overall approach about our outreach, but I feel like we're in a much better place today than we were when I first became the chief.
Mhm.
And I think that Montgomery County having such a diverse community, and there was a lot of things that transpire from the beginning of my tenure to where I am currently today, that involved a lot of dynamics with reimagining policing in Montgomery County. We talked about, the things that happened after George Floyd with police reform, those sorts of things within that occurred with legislation in our state and in locally here in Montgomery County. And it required us to have to really kind of really redevelop and really create some new relationships and new processes that the police department has never been involved in before. So that I feel like we've accomplished many of those goals. There's still a lot of work to do. And I think that it's going to be something that's continuous, because when you talk about really building positive relationships within our community, that is something that you just don't, you don't do it for 6 months and think it's just going to run. That's going to be a very easy track to just walk away from. This is going to be ongoing, day in and day out, for the next chief and beyond.
You said that you've achieved, as it related to your vision, some of the things that you wanted to do. What is it that you wanted to do that you believe did not happen?
Yeah, well, the one thing that I wanted to do that didn't happen, that still makes me not sleep well at night, was to be able to keep our department, the recruitment of new police officers and the growth of our department. I wanted that to really to take off, and we went in the opposite direction. And there's a variety of reasons for that. But I felt like that, from my standpoint, a personal feeling, I felt like, to me, that's a failure on my part, that we were not able to really have our department grow. The numbers have gone in the opposite direction, with having 180 officers below our complement. That's been very disappointing for me, because, again, I think this is a fabulous place to work. I think it has lots of opportunities in our for those who join this police department in our profession, and to not see this continuously grow and be able to provide the ultimate amount of service for our community that could really be more enhanced in so many different areas, particularly in the community engagement world. And now we have our patrol officers who are really, having to just provide the basic services in a lot of ways, because they don't have the time to be able to do more engagement within our community, because we just don't have the personnel to do that.
Well, as you know, being the head of a police jurisdiction, um, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. The Montgomery County lines are porous, and I don't mean just as far as crime, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but as it relates to recruitment, you are dealing with and have dealt with the same thing that's happening in Prince George's County, in
Right.
Anne
That's
Arundel,
correct.
in Washington, D.C., Fairfax County, and we can have a whole geography lesson.
Right.
Various
True.
and sundry police departments, sheriff's departments, and so obviously you're disappointed because you're focused on what's happening in Montgomery County. But I would imagine being up against that kind of competition, on one hand, it's like this is the best that can be done.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Harold. I mean, it's not only that, right? I mean, I've been in many discussions with many experts across the country as we've talked about police recruitment, and retention, right, within our departments. And on a national level, it's a problem, right? And the competition is fierce. I remember when we started talking about providing bonuses for new recruits, and we do offer, right, $20,000 signing bonus, right?
Hmm.
After I knew that, at the time, now retired Chief Conti from the Metropolitan Police Department, had already been offering $20,000. And I remember my good friend Rob, after I made this offer, I looked maybe, a week or two later, now I'm seeing Metropolitan offering $25,000, and he's upping me, and that's the kind of competitive grind that we all are with these agencies that you just noted that I'm competing against. And, it from that perspective, it really was eye-opening for me that, that this is not just about the money, right?
Hmm.
When we look at this, we look at a lot of other professions that are struggling to find staffing in so many ways, whether it's teachers, whether it's nurses, right? Particularly when it comes to public service, but in general, right? And then we have this thing called COVID that comes through that really also is a factor. And so for me, just from a, again, from a leadership perspective for my, what I wanted to leave for this county in my tenure was not to be able to say, well, we still have a staffing problem, right? I wanted to be able to say we at least are making, and we're making some very positive headway. I think there's still some challenges the county is going to face after I'm gone, but I think it's not where I wanted us to be at my when I was to retire. So it's but you're exactly right that that competition in this Washington metropolitan area, not to even include our federal partners that are also involved in the pool of applicants that we are trying to hire. And for us, one of my main points of contention with my executive officers and my personnel staff was the one thing I would not concede was we were not going to lower our standards, our hiring standards, just to put people in the seats. We were still going to hold a very high standard that we have always set. And I'll give just a quick example where we began hiring lateral officers from other departments from across the country. And I had, countless numbers of seats to be able to fill. And I would have sometimes 25 to 30 officers from other jurisdictions that would apply. And there were times I only would hire one or two of them because I could tell that many of them had, they just did not meet our standards. And I was not going to hire them just because I needed to fill those seats.
You said 38 years, and I kind of did the math. 37 years ago, dating myself, is when I started as a really young reporter covering news in Montgomery County.
Mm-hmm.
I know how the news coverage and the kinds of public safety issues began to change or have changed since then. But from your perspective, what do you believe is the biggest change that you've seen since you first joined the Montgomery County Police Force 38 years ago?
As it relates to news coverage?
Well, no, as it relates to your perspective as an officer.
Oh, as an officer. Wow. Yeah. Whoa, that's an incredible big difference, right? Because in my role as a young patrol officer, it was about when you look at the basic concept of doing police work on a daily basis and having, what you want to have a positive impact in the community. As a patrol officer, it was just really answering those calls for service and being very proactive and, stopping crime and addressing the public safety issues of the day, which was a lot different. I mean, the themes are very, general are are much the same. But I remember, we had a big focus on drunk driving, much larger then than we do today, because it was a much larger issue then. Not that it's still, it's an important issue, but it was a much larger issue when I first came on the department. And that was an emphasis that was driven down from our, command staff, and that was important. And so today, those dynamics have changed, and there's a lot. Today, policing is a lot different, particularly as it relates to technology. That we didn't have this, the technology. Of course, you had a pen and paper, I had carbon paper to write police reports, and so you had to write down every time they gave you a call, right? You had to write down on a piece of paper in your car and make sure hopefully you didn't lose it, right? And you had to go to a payphone or a business to make a phone call because we didn't have cell phones, right? That didn't even exist. Pagers, I think, were just probably
Yes.
beginning to start to come out, right? So there's a lot that has changed. And I think this is the reality that people must always remember that. And I share this with our police officers and our professional staff.
Well,
Change
Chief,
is
hold on.
inevitable.
Hold on. Don't forget that point. I've got to take that real quick break.
Okay. All right. Gotcha.
Yeah, just stand by. Don't forget, you can hear this at every edition of the Daily Drum Insights segment via podcast on WHUR.com. Stay with us. The Daily Drum will continue on Sirius XM Channel 141. The original Quiet Storm with John Mons is next on WHUR. This conversation continues on Sirius XM Channel 141 in just a few seconds. And welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation with Montgomery County Police Chief Marcus Jones. He is retiring on July 1st after 38 years with the department. We are talking about all things, his career, public safety, law enforcement, how things were, how they are, and perhaps what the future will be of law enforcement in the county. Chief, before the break, you were talking about one of the things that you were sharing with your officers in reference to how things have changed during your time as a police officer.
Yeah, and I just stress that because I think, Harold, that those things will continue to change. I mean, things will continue to change, right? Technology will improve. The way, and again, the way the community will demand that the service is provided by the police department. And I say this often, that I think that policing is local. Communities demand what they want from their police departments. I think Montgomery County is clearly a prime example of that, about what the community wants in order to maintain public safety. And with the department, we have to be able to adapt. They will have to be able to adapt in time, right? To understand that, whether it's technology, whether it's the new way of enforcement or providing those services, those things will always be evolving. I think over time, we're always looking to improve, and that's one of the things I really stressed about when I took over as the chief, was to find processes within our department that would make the department overall a better police department, to be better today, tomorrow, than we were at that very moment. And when I walked out of this door, our plan to walk out of this door in a little over a month, I wanted this to be better than I found it. And I think I really do believe we are a better police department in so many other ways. And there's a matter of a lot of support that has allowed us to get there.
You mentioned technology. The new drone program is still in effect. Mm-hmm. You and I are both old enough to remember movies about drones involved in policing. The whole RoboCop kind of thing. But the future is now. What are your thoughts about that? How is that received? Are you fully comfortable with that?
Yeah, I really am excited. I mean, this is, to me, has been one of the most innovative things we've done in our department's history. And the one thing I'm very proud about was, as we put this program together, was to really have a good conversation with the community about what this looked like, right? Not just that we did it and we're saying, this is the drone program, this is what we're doing, and just adapt to it, right? It was more about having real conversations with community members across the county to tell them what the program, what we were proposing, right? To make sure they understood it wasn't a surveillance program, that we were just going to have a drone flying up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just monitoring all kinds of activity that was out there. This program has been designated simply to be responding to certain calls for service, particularly crimes of violence, crimes that are in progress, in certain parts of our county where we're allowed to fly, and helping people understand what was the legalities of us in utilizing this program, and it's responding to really 911 calls that are, we call it live 911. So when a 911 call is made, the officers that are controlling this program, the drone, they're listening to the call as it is being made. It's not waiting for it to be dispatched. So the drone is actually being launched in a much faster time frame than an officer is actually even getting the call and being able to get to the call. So our response times are much quicker. And so we're seeing really, and in a lot of cases, we're seeing either a crime that is actually in progress. We're seeing suspects, running away from crime, and we're able to, surveil them and provide assistance to the officers with the eyes in the sky. And on the other hand, we've also had the luxury of being able to even cut off officers or tell them they're not needed because the crime that somebody who thinks something is suspicious, or the suspect may have, they think the individual has a gun in their hand or some other object. We're finding that the object is not what they thought it was, and therefore there's a decreased police response, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's no interaction whatsoever, or it's being deconflicted in a way that we allow it to not to have to escalate in a way. So that's important for us to be able to de-escalate situations as much as it is for us to be able to capture anybody that's involved in a crime. And so this is a game changer. I will tell you, in some regards, in policing, that I think it's really a sign of the times about innovation, about what's coming. And I don't know if we'll ever get to the RoboCop stage, but this is right. But this is the type of technology that we knew that was on the horizon.
Speaking of an issue regarding technology, as you know, the District of Columbia MPD has opened up its real-time crime center. About a month or so ago, Prince George's County announced a similar thing. What about Montgomery?
Yes, and we in fact do have. We call it. We have a real-time crime center. We call it our Violent Crime Information Center, and we are coordinating efforts with the District of Columbia, with Metropolitan Police Department, as well as we are also going to coordinate with Prince George's County to have those centers be connected, so that we're sharing real-time information because we border both of those locations. And that's what I think is going to be vitally important for us to in order to combat crime. When we've had issues of carjackings or other types of violent crimes that are crossing our borders, that information sharing is crucial. And we've stood up our center. We're not fully to where I want it to be. We're getting there, though. We're working on some additional funding in this year's budget that we hope that the county council is going to pass here in the next couple of weeks. And that's going to help to support us. And that has actually already proven to be fruitful for us to help us to solve crimes in a much faster way based upon that. And again, I think that's a great step for all of us, for all the law enforcement partners, that we are connecting in that way and being better partners of sharing information and really in real time.
You have not been shy in expressing your frustration with the youth crime in the county.
Right.
You, during your press conferences, you have been unvarnished in your consternation about it. Talk to me about that now,
Mhm.
and even as you're leaving, you still have an opportunity, I think, to kind of influence addressing that.
Yeah, yeah, Harold. I tell you, one of this is the thing that really bothers me in the sense of trying to be a partner, and I sometimes feel like the police department is being plagued as the enemy in order to try to address juvenile delinquency in a lot of these crimes that are occurring, particularly in a time where we're seeing more juveniles become engaged in more violent type of crime. And I think that's the most disturbing part because we're seeing offenders become younger. Where there was a time you would run into the 16 and the 17-year old, and that's understandable as they are growing into young adults. But now we're seeing 13, 14, 15-year-old young people have access to guns and utilizing firearms in acts of violence, and it's something that we've just never seen before. And my discontent a lot with what are some of the changes that were made legislatively really centered around our ability not to be able to talk to young people in a way to make sure that we would get information that would prevent other acts of violence or retaliation. And that's been one of my points of contention there. That really, there have been barriers placed in front of law enforcement that prevents us from that. But again, when you're having young people that are involved in carjackings, and I'm not just talking about one or two events. You're seeing sometimes young people who've been involved in multiple carjackings. Again, we're seeing them also involved in, numerous events of auto thefts. That's been on the rise here in the county. And so I have always wanted to just to find ways of intervention to play
Mhm.
that for us to have some role of intervention to help guide young people to a better place. Working with the Department of Juvenile Services and the state's attorney's office, not to always to have penalties be the most glaring way of dealing with said problem. But if we've got some diversion programs that are clearly established that will help these young people not continue to be involved in delinquent acts, that's the area that I would like people to listen and allow law enforcement to be a partner in this and not to be the enemy.
Do you believe that the modern criminal has become more sophisticated, whether they're juveniles or adults? Have you seen an evolution of sophistication in some of the crimes that you're dealing with now?
Yeah, in some ways, yes, and I think technology, right, is an avenue that allows that to happen. When you can go to YouTube, right? We go to YouTube. I go to YouTube as a hairy homeowner to fix problems in my home, right? Well, criminals are going to YouTube to find ways to commit crimes. And we're finding that they're utilizing these avenues of technology in order to be able to do that. So just as we talked about auto thefts, where young people started going to YouTube to basically and starting to have these not YouTube, but you go through TikTok to do the TikTok challenge on how to steal cars, like the Hyundai. So right now, currently, we're having today, tomorrow, and Saturday working with the Hyundai Corporation to basically upgrade Hyundai vehicles for free, right? For to give software updates and also to provide vehicle wheel locks to prevent crime, because these sophisticated, right, young people have figured out a way to steal these cars very easily.
Yeah.
We encourage people who have these vehicles to come up to our Montgomery County Police headquarters here in Gaithersburg, and between 8 and 6 on Friday, and 8 and 3 on Saturday, and bring their vehicles and get this free. It won't only take them 20 to 30 minutes in order to do that. We've got Hyundai's also offered some refreshments while their car is being upgraded. They've got a little customer lounge. So these are the things that I think is important for police departments, right? As more sophistication is being done on the criminality side, that we also have partnerships with others throughout our community in order to provide these preventative measures in order to make sure that these events are not occurring and our community members aren't impacted as much.
Do you have a summer crime strategy?
So yeah, I mean, we're challenged, I would say, from a resource standpoint. But one of the things I think we are really focusing on right now, Harold, is focusing on our areas of concern, where we have a lot of social events in our, like, for example, downtown Silver Spring. We know we have a very vibrant nightlife now,
Yeah.
which is good, right? But it requires attention on the public safety side. So we will be putting additional resources. We put some other technologies to help us to deal with some public safety issues, but we'll also deal with that from a personnel standpoint. And we're doing that within other parts of the county. We have challenges with car rallies and car meetups. That's a big problem in the county. We know in the summer, that's only going to probably grow. We're working with you're talking about like our real-time crime centers. We're doing a lot of communicating with our law enforcement partners across the state of Maryland and the Washington metropolitan area, because these things these big rallies and events are moving from one county to another, right? And taking over large parking lots, or even taking over intersections for young people to put on these shows that they like to do, and put these things on YouTube. So we're going to really up our resources to be able to address that and to maintain and be vigilant over that for the summer as well. And again, we're going to, focus on those areas that we've had problems, whether it's auto thefts or carjackings. The good news is our carjacking numbers are going down, because we're putting some resources into trying to be more visible in certain areas. But I think we're also making some impact on finding those individuals who are responsible for some of those violent events.
Speaking of the roads, one of the things that has been of concern in the county for a handful of years is pedestrian injuries and deaths.
Yes.
What is behind that? Because to me, I'm not a police officer, I'm a citizen, but, and forgive my naivete, but it just seems to be easy to slow down, to follow the rules of the road. I'm sure you heard just this week, Cottage City in Prince George's County just started their pilot program with stop sign.
I saw that. Yes.
And they're not fining or ticketing people yet. But why do you think this pedestrian safety thing has become so problematic?
Well, I think there's we do a review of many of our fatal collisions that occur in the county. Again, in Montgomery County, we have more fatal collisions each year. Then we have homicides, right? I think last year we had 35 fatal collisions versus we had 29 homicides. So that we look at what is the cause, right? That one of the main things we focus on, and one thing that I've done is I created a central traffic unit to focus on not only daytime but evening hours, are high collision areas within the county, and pedestrian safety is a part of that mix.
Mhm.
That we look at where we have high volumes of not fatal, but also just pedestrian collisions as a whole, right? That we have in cars. And what we're finding is a combination of things, right? We're finding that our drivers are in such a hurry. I think in comparison to what you were just saying in Cottage City, I was looking at they were showing on one of the news channels, they're showing just the vehicles. I think it was in Alexandria yesterday. Maybe I'm thinking of a mix, but watching cars just simply not stop at a red light, making a right turn on red. And people are in such a hurry, right? They're just a second or 2 seconds of time to stop and really look both ways goes a very long way. And I think what we're finding is that people are in such a hurry that's not happening, and
Mm.
that becomes our problem. I mean, this year alone, we've had 5 pedestrians struck already, right? And fatally struck. And then we're also seeing, again, we're not trying to victim blame here, but it's a reality that that our pedestrians must also be very cautious when they're crossing roadways, right? In designated crosswalks, and making sure that they've got well lit clothing, right? Those are the things that we're looking at from a preventative standpoint to make sure that you're safe when you cross these roadways. So we're continuously pushing on an educational front to make sure people are educated about these things. But again, we have to find ways that may include some enforcement in some of these high crash areas to make sure that people are not, that they're understanding that they got to slow down, that
Yeah.
they've got to pay attention, and they've got to utilize the crosswalk, right? All of those things are important, and we got to make sure our roads are engineered in such a way that we're not creating more danger for everyone that's involved, and so that's still a priority for us.
What do you make of the ATM thefts that we've seen in the region? I find it frightening, but also fascinating.
It is a fascinating crime that these individuals who really are bold in so many ways, and how violent. I mean, that they will utilize a vehicle to crash into an establishment, and yank a ATM out of a store. Unprecedented. It's one of those things you would only see every now and then. Now it's becoming almost like a sort of a
Convenient.
trend and groups of individuals that are engaged in that. Yeah, it's a really a strange phenomenon that we've never sort of engaged in before, but we're seeing more and more. And I think that again, I think sometimes places are going to have to put more security type of equipment or accessories around their establishments that can deter these types of crimes from happening. Because I think that's where we are in today's environment. We have to really kind of like think about that when we design our stores and our establishments, our shopping centers, for the safety of everyone.
Yeah. So, as we started this conversation about your leaving, have you do you have any input into who you would like to see replace you? Do you know who you might pick and why?
Well, I don't have any specific person that I would choose, but I would say this, and I've said this to the county executive, that I feel very confident that we have a strong bench here in Montgomery County, that there is no need for a national search. I think the county executive has listened. I think he has given me some degree of agreement that he does believe that we have capable executives here that could possibly would follow my lead and be the next police chief here in Montgomery County and do a great job. So I'm very confident that I think that where we are in currently in our environment today here in Montgomery County, I think it will be a very easy transition based upon a lot of the work that we've been doing. And anyone that would be coming from the outside would really be behind the eight ball, because it would take a bit of a learning curve to really kind of adapt to a lot of what's happening now. So I think right now that's my suggestion to the county executive. I've told them that, and I think we're on the same page.
What would someone from that bench need to have in order to take over that leadership role to move the county police department forward?
Yeah, I think they're going to have, really, it's going to be a challenge. I mean, it's still challenging times. I think they're going to have a commitment to understanding where the department is as it relates to the staffing, as we talked about earlier, knowing that they're going to have to be very innovative in really moving that forward to get more police officers hired here in the county. They're going to have a true commitment to community engagement, community policing, that we maintain that continues to grow. And I think they're going to have the courage, right, to really be able to lead this department in a way to help navigate the morale of the department and to keep that focus and understand the plight of the community as they look at what are their public safety issues and have great empathy for the community and listen is going to have to be the greatest attribute. Not just to just say this is what we're going to do, but to work in partnership with the community in order to be successful across the board.
The former police chief Tom Manger retired and went to U.S. Capitol Police. Are you open to doing something similar, or are you going to go fishing?
I think I'm going to go fishing and play golf, Harold. I don't think I'm going to do what Chief Manger. I just ran into him yesterday, and he kept poking the bear, and I told him, don't I'm not answering any calls that come from him.
Yeah, Chief Conti in DC retired, went to the FBI. It seems to be the trajectory. But even if you decide to do that, at least cast a few worms.
There you go. I got to do that at least for the short term.
Yeah.
And I've said this. I'm not opposed to. I'm still a young guy, and I'm probably going to do something along the line. But right now I've not made any decision on exactly what that something would be. But I am going to spend a little time trying to cast a line and hit the little white ball. So that's
how about that? Yeah. And as you said, I'm sure your wife has a honey-do list for you as well.
It's a very long honey-do list.
Oh my goodness. Chief Marcus Jones, thank you so much for talking to us. Take care of yourself. Enjoy retirement, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Harold. I appreciate you. Take care. Very much appreciated.
That is the Daily Drum for this Thursday, May 9th. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.